Good. How are you?
Good. So thank you so much for taking my Zoom call today. I really appreciate it.
No worries.
Um, I first of all I want to know, how do you do it all? You're like husband, father, dental student, and then working on the weekends. Like how in the world are you making all that possible?
Well, my wife definitely is a huge support for sure. She is like the best mom and wife that there is, which is fantastic. And I think a lot of it also is just managing your time well, and then just sort of having faith that things will work out how they're supposed to. I mean, in undergrad, it was like, all right, struggle to try and get an A, get an A, get an A, get an A. And then in dental school, you learn that unless you're planning on like specializing, that, sometimes it's okay to get a B here and there. You don't have to always try to be perfect. Just recognize that, you got to put things in priority, and make sure that whatever is most important is taken care of first. And for me, that's my family. As long as I take care of them and make sure that they're taken care of, most everything else is always kind of tended to fall in place. I mean, it hasn't always been easy. There were times when, so like I try not to study on Sundays.
Okay.
And a time when I was like, just because I feel like it's important to like have that time for like yourself, your family, and everything. Give yourself a little bit of a break. And so I made that commitment to my wife, my family, that like Sundays were going to be my day to like just spend time with them. And there was one Sunday that rolled around. We had a test on Monday that I hadn't studied for. And I was like, man, like I made this promise to my family versus like, there's this test. Like, what should I do? I just felt like, you know what, like you promised your family that like you're going to like spend time with them. And so I was like, you know what, I'm just going to do that. I wake up early. And then woke up early on Monday, and we had like a snow day. So I got like an extra day to study, and it ended up working out fine. So just where you just, I don't know, just kind of have faith and trust that things will work out.
That
And
things work out. Yeah, no, that's
yeah,
man, that totally worked out. In a place like, I'm originally from Cleveland, Ohio, so I can relate to, and I went to grad school actually at the University of Cincinnati.
okay.
So not too far away, so I can relate to snow days saving you in Texas. I would need like a really bad flash flood or like an ice storm.
If you get like even a sliver of snow in Texas, they'd
Yeah,
probably put
then
everything out.
everything shuts down. So that's the really good part. Well, that's really cool. Well, just let me tell you a little bit about me. People don't always just say yes to me with such little information. So let me just give you a little background. So my background is in commercial real estate, but actually what I do now is make content, videos and things like that. And so I help companies to use LinkedIn to get in front of their customers. And one of my clients, their client is Comfort Dental. And they have charged us with, we're doing a proposal for doing a recruitment strategy for them. They're trying to grow and open more dental offices. And so they're trying to hire about 10 dentists a year. And so a lot of times when people give us a project, they have a great idea about what they think works. And so I like to talk to real people and kind of figure out where people are going and what the opportunities are, and try to help them create their strategy so that they can offer something attractive to potential, dentists when they're getting out of school. So I know that, previously, most dentists went into private practice, and it was kind of like, if you're going to be a dentist, you're going to be an entrepreneur, and people would, the way I understand it is, you kind of find an older established dentist. It's nice if maybe it's like your dad or your grandfather, and you kind of take over the family practice, and that's what a lot of people did. And now with places like, more retail dentistry and things like that, some people are being able to take more of a path of like, employees. So what I'm trying to figure out is, are people still like, is that still the goal of like a dental student to one day have their own practice, or are people more interested in just, you know, being able to have a little bit more work-life balance and being an associate dentist somewhere and kind of maybe working up in a company?
So I think it depends. I think there's a place for all that in dentistry today. Like for me, I think eventually I'd like to own my own practice. I do feel like coming right out of school, I think it would be possible, and I think I could be successful doing that. But I'm also the type of person that tends to like, I care a lot. Like I invest myself pretty fully in whatever I do, and I could see myself, just dental school has already been hard enough to come home and like not have that be, you know, a distraction from my family life and my, you know, my life at home. And so for the first little bit when I get out of school, I had an opportunity to do something like that, to buy in with somebody at a really nice high-end private practice, same type of practice that I want to have someday. But I opted not to do that because I felt like it'd just be a lot of pressure coming out of school to try and focus on the dentistry side of things. Plus, most of the time when you're in a situation like that, you the patients aren't necessarily just divvied out 50-50, right? So you go into this established practice, and a lot of times you have a previous dentist who's working there, has his patient base established already, and then you'll get like the new patients or something like that. So he'll just continue to see all of his own patients he's been seeing for forever. But it's sort of on you to find the new patients. And depending on your situation, you may or may not have like a daily guarantee. You may pretty much just be working on percentage of collections, which I actually think isn't a bad idea. That's a whole separate discussion, but my philosophy on compensation, I think is interesting. I think that, for a true practice to be successful, and eventually I'll get to where I can implement some of these things in my own practice, but I think your producers should be compensated on their production. The people at the front desk, the people who do insurance and things like that should be compensated as far as some sort of bonus on what gets collected. And your assistants, your staff, and things like that should be compensated based on how well their supply is utilized, how well are things run, how streamlined are things, are they able to get patients back and get them seated on time, things like that. Mm-hmm. But a lot of times, like if you're coming out and you're just partnering with somebody, you're paid off of like an adjusted collections or a percentage of your collections. And fresh out of school, that just wasn't something that I wanted to worry too much about in that situation. So I think because of that, a lot of people are turning to corporate dentistry. I have worked in corporate dentistry for several years prior to coming to dental school, and on the weekends during school as well. And I think corporate dentistry has a foothold. It's definitely always going to be here. But I think that with corporate dentistry, you have you plateau a lot faster than you do in private practice. So you'll come out, you'll have a better lifestyle for sure than probably somebody who goes into an associateship right away. You'll be able to have that nice house, the car, the lifestyle, everything that you want. But then depending on who you're with, the opportunities for ownership may or may not be available. And the opportunities as far as retirement and things like that, it's just not as lucrative as private practice. Mm-hmm. Then you have people who are going to do what I'm going to do, public health. So that's what I'm going to do. My wife has stayed home most of the time with our kids. She's worked some throughout dental school to support us and whatnot. But we still have quite a lot of loans. We're out of state and everything. So for me, I'm doing public health because, well, first off, I ran into a really good situation. Okay. It's in Nebraska, and Medicaid out there actually covers all procedures. Most Medicaid won't cover root canals. They won't cover crowns. They'll just cover like extractions and fillings, right? Right. So this place, I feel like I'm going to be able to get like a really good experience with kind of all aspects of dentistry. And then there's loan repayment that goes along with it. So I just have a salary pay. I'm not having to work on I'm not having to focus on like, crap, did I meet my quota to get my production, for the month, which I think I do fine in that setting, in a production setting, but it's nice to not have to worry about it right when you come out of school.
And stress. Yeah. You want a
Yeah.
couple years with no stress.
Yeah. So I'll have like a base pay, and then on top of that, tax exempt loan repayment.
Okay.
And most of the places that I looked at loan repayment for, most places you end up getting around 20 to 30,000 per year. That's the highest that I typically found.
Okay.
And then when this place approached me, like I said, I feel like I just kind of fell into a good situation. The state of Nebraska has a program where they will pay the 20 to 30, and then the company you work for can match that, and then it goes into this little pot that is tax exempt. So you end up getting 60,000 a year. Loan repayment on top of whatever your base salary and your benefits and everything else is. So I guess long story short, like I do think that there are people who will go out and join private practice right away. And then you've got some people that'll do corporate, and then you've got other folks who are going to do some sort of like loan repayment type thing. And then you also have sort of this other growing subgroup of like residency, like general practice residency, so GPR or AEGD, which is essentially another year of school where you'll do like more in-depth training.
Like
you'll get some
periodontal or something specialized.
Well, so there are specialties, but then there's one that is now becoming more and more common for general practitioners as well, where you just go and you'll get more experience doing like implants or doing like molar endo, because a lot of schools you'll graduate and you won't have a ton of experience doing like molar root canals, depending on if your school had a specialty or not. If you have specialties, a lot of times they'll actually take some of those procedures and the specialty residents will do them, so you don't get to do as much as if you went to a school that doesn't have specialties. But on the flip side, if you have specialties, it's kind of nice because you get the latest and greatest as far as the education, the training, what's out there, what type of systems are available to use. So it's kind of give and take. But a lot of folks are opting to do these like residencies just because either A, they're not sure of where they want to go, or B, kind of like what they feel that, what their skill set is.
Right.
And so for me, I talked to a guy who is a clinic director at a GPR. He's pretty well renowned on several Facebook groups and dental groups. His name's Paul Goodman, and I talked to him, and he's like of the opinion that pretty much everybody should do like an AEGD or GPR, and I've never felt that way or had that opinion myself. And so I talked to him and I asked him what he felt the best, or why he felt that was so important. And he said, well, you'll get to learn implants and everything. And I said, okay, well, I've listened to you talk about this with people. So if I'm going to do a GPR, the things that I would want out of it would be lots and lots and lots of implants, not just like 2 or 3, but I'm talking like 50, 60 implants, sedation training, being able to put people to sleep and do dentistry, and then a ton of molar endo. And he just laughed and was like, well, I mean, you're pretty much just going to get like extractions and a couple implants at a GPR. And I was like, well, to me, like if you're in that setting, there's the aspect of, so when a dentist is working in the back, there are two kind of groups of patients he's working with. He's working with patients that come in and see his hygienist and they get their cleanings done, and he's doing the exam and diagnosing all of the problems that need to be taken care of in the future. And then he's got a group of people who he's actually doing the fillings, the extractions, the stuff that he's already done the diagnosis for before, right? So he's got to be able to balance both of those.
Right.
And in a GPR, you don't have that. You don't have both aspects of that. You still got 2 patients a day and somebody's looking over your shoulder. So I was like, well, yeah, maybe you'll learn how to place implants, but then you'll get out and you're still probably going to be just as slow as you were as a 4th-year dental student.
Right.
You're not going to have much more experience when it comes to, molar endo, maybe you'll learn to do some implants and some sedation, which is good. But my thought process is I don't know of many doctors out there. So, because the goal would be to go to the GPR, skip the whole corporate side of things, and then go into either an associateship or a partnership type thing, like you mentioned before. That's kind of what most people want to do when they go that route. But my concern with that was I don't know of too many guys who don't already place implants that are going to just bring on some new guy fresh out of a GPR residency and say, oh, you know what, let's go ahead and blow 10 grand on implant supplies. And, I'll just give you 5 patients a month to place implants on, even though you're still taking 2 hours to do a single filling.
You didn't get that much practice.
Here's 5 implant. I just don't see that happening.
Yeah.
So public health for me was more of
So public health, will you be working on like a clinic, or tell me what that looks like?
So there's multiple options with public health as well. So you have some that are government run and operated. And then you have private corporations who receive funding from the government. The one that I'm going to be working for is a private corporation.
Okay.
But it receives a substantial stipend from the government because they work on patients who either do not have any insurance or they only have Medicaid insurance.
Okay.
And they get their funding based off of what is called a HPSA score.
Okay.
So HPSA, Healthcare Provider Shortage Area, is what it stands for.
Okay.
And what they do is they measure, they take like a census essentially of everybody and say like, okay, well, how many people in this area have an income below X? And then they look at the healthcare providers in that area and they say, okay, well, how many of the dentists in, X number of square miles take Medicaid or have some sort of sliding fee scale for people with low income? And they create a ratio based on the income level of certain people in the area, the average income level, and the number of providers who cater to low income people. And if that number is high enough, if it's a high number, then you get more funding.
Okay.
So the place where I'm going to go, there's actually not another Medicaid provider within like 150 miles.
Okay.
So
people are going to be coming from far away to get.
Yeah. Yep. And so they're scheduled out now for like over 6 months.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
Yep.
So I have 2 questions for you that you kind of mentioned before. One of the things that Comfort Dental, they are very much, so them, you smile. What do you think about them?
Well, I don't know Comfort Dental, but so I'm assuming then that this is not just an interview, then it's also kind of more like a recruitment. Is that kind of the?
No, it's not. It's not a recruitment.
Okay.
No, at all. It really is it just is the interview. I don't work for them. So
okay.
We do my client does their real estate, all of their real estate. And so we do Kentucky, Indiana, and Ohio, right? And so they want to open more dental clinics, and we want them to open more dental clinics, but the issue is a dentist shortage, right? And so our job is to make their recruitment strategy. So this is literally just for informational purposes.
So here's what you're going to want to do. Okay. Because I looked into a couple of companies like this, actually. Well, it's not Comfort Dental necessarily, but there's like another group. I think Marquee Dental is.
Well, can I ask you a couple of specific questions about what they're doing? I want to get your thoughts on it. So first of all, they're offering like a starting salary of $125,000 and then $25,000 in student loan repayment. Do people prefer to just have a higher salary, or do do students like the student loan repayment?
It depends.
Okay.
It depends. So I think, like, from my perspective, they need to figure out what type of person they're looking to hire. Okay. Because you've got 2 sort of, groups that come out of dental school. One group is obviously larger than the other one. The first group is going to be your young single dentist or maybe newly married dentist, just met their fiance or their spouse in dental school or something and gets married, and no family, right? Just kind of them and their spouse. People like that, I'm guessing, would probably prefer a higher salary with maybe a little loan repayment, not, loan repayment's going to be a bonus for them, but they're looking for kind of a higher starting salary would be my guess.
Okay.
And then you've got my group, which is.
So why do you think that they would prefer the higher salary versus the loan repayment?
Well, they didn't have to take out the full amount of loans.
Okay.
And so their loan balance, while it's still substantially high, it's not nearly as high as someone like me, right?
Okay, because they weren't trying to actually live off the money too. Okay.
Maybe they had a mom or dad who was a dentist who was helping them out with school or something like that. Or maybe they were able to work more because they didn't have a family. And so they worked some nights during the week and took maybe 50% of the amount that they needed out rather than the full amount or something like that. And then you've got folks like me who have a family who took out the full amount and are looking to pay off their loans as quickly as possible.
Okay.
Now,
I started following this guy called thebrokedoctor.com. Have you ever seen his blog?
What is his name?
He has a blog called thebrokedoctor.com, and it follows his journey to paying off his dental loans.
His loans. Oh, I'll have to look him up.
Anyway.
So with those two groups, though, this is something that they may not have considered. And I bring this up. My background's in business and administration and stuff. That's what I did before dental school. So whenever you hire an employee, right, I think that you want to be concerned about how long is that employee going to hang around.
Okay.
Right. So if you're looking to get somebody to stay around long term, you're probably going to, this is just my opinion, but in my opinion, people who have families and are more kind of in that boat of wanting to pay their loans off more, if you offer somebody like that a loan repayment that is over X number of years, they're more likely to say yes and to stay with you for X number of years than come work for you for a year or two, get a little of their loans paid off, get a little, get their lifestyle started, and then hop around to somebody else.
Okay.
I think it's pretty common to see, just my classmates who've graduated ahead of me, you'll see a lot of folks who don't have families kind of work for a year or two at Aspen or Mortensen or Heartland or someplace, work for a couple of years, and then they leave because, they're just like, well, I'm good. Here's this other opportunity. Okay. I think that's kind of a trend we see with millennials in general, is they tend to leave quickly.
Okay. So so here's the other thing. So they either offer that salary, 30% of commissions, or an opportunity. They have two different opportunities to buy in. You can buy into a new practice for like $300,000, and for an existing practice for like about $500,000. One of the things that I want to know your read on is that, so when you buy into a practice at $300,000, there's basically three people. There's the original people who are kind of like the master developer of Comfort Dental, and they keep a third. And so they select the real estate and do all the finish out and all that kind of stuff. And then you have two new dentists at each $300,000 each. And so the way that I understand it is that it's kind of like an arranged marriage. So you come in and they put you together, and if one of you should leave, then they replace it. How do people feel about not getting to pick the people that they go into business with? Is that standard, or?
I think it is pretty standard. It's more standard now than it used to be.
Okay.
So if I'm reading this right, then basically in a situation like that, is it like a profit sharing where basically anything that is net, Comfort takes a third, and then the remaining 2/3 is split evenly 50-50 between the other two?
I'm saying yes, but I haven't seen all of the paperwork at this point. So what I'm focused on, because I'm like, really, you go into business with somebody and you don't pick who they are. And so Comfort Dental, their philosophy is, so I haven't seen the pro forma, and I'm from a business background too, but they don't focus on high-end dentistry. And so one of the things that they say their challenge is that there's such a focus on cosmetic dentistry and high-end dentistry, and they are your bread and butter dentists. They go into more rural areas. They take all types of insurance. They have their own insurance plan, and they do Medicaid. and they're open real people hours. So they're like a blue collar dentist. So it's like, you know, Aspen or whatever from 7 to 7 and then shortened hours on Saturday. But the dentist actually makes 2 to 3 times of what, you know, a regular dentist makes because it's volume dentistry, right? So I mean, you're seeing,
any idea what the range is? Have they told you any numbers?
they're telling me that the range is, I shouldn't say because I don't know what year it is, but they're saying their dentists are looking at more like $250 to $300,000 is kind of like the average of what they're.
I would be very, very surprised if that was the average.
Okay.
More realistically, I'll bet you they're probably making, I mean, this is just guess. I don't know, because I haven't seen their numbers, but I've talked to a lot of companies, a lot of DSOs and mini DSOs, kind of like this. And most of the time, I've had people say, "Oh yeah, I've interviewed at several places where they say, "Oh yeah, this is kind of what we expect you to make." And then when I sit down and actually go through a pro forma statement, look at what the dentist produced last month and everything, you're probably more looking, I would say around like 225 would be a pretty good salary at that position. I'd say that's probably, if you're doing well, that's probably what you're making, 225.
Okay.
Anything above that, you're killing it in a situation like that.
Okay.
2 cents, but I would be skeptical of
Okay.
something you're going to make over 250.
And so then the other question that I have is, so the office is open 66 hours a week. So that's why it's really important for you to have the 2 dentists. Like, how do people feel about working those kind of hours?
Depends on your person again. Family guy like me, I wouldn't do it. Absolutely wouldn't do it. The only way I would do it is if it was a scenario where I was working, where there were time frames when both dentists weren't at the office at the same time, and I was working only 40 hours, and I was maybe working like 4 10s or something like that.
So they do like 1 hour of kind of like overlap in between. So I don't think you end up having the same schedule every week because I don't think anybody wants to do all evenings and anybody wants to do all days. But they basically have only one dentist there at a time. And so that's why they do it, the 3-part partnership.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm sure that would work.
Okay.
I wouldn't really be interested in that. I like my set schedule.
Right.
I like to spend my evenings with my kids. But, if you don't have kids and a family, that's probably less important.
Okay. All right. So this is, like I said, this is not recruitment. Like, I really want a real opinion on what people feel, right? Because I have to go back and make real recommendations.
Yeah.
What'd you say?
I said you're doing market research for me.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, this is, and that's why I'm like, can we do a Zoom call? Because it's one thing for me to tell them that somebody said that, and it's another thing for me to clip it and say, this isn't the right opportunity, because that's my thing is that, okay, when you look at the world in general, 1 in 10 people are entrepreneur. I'm an entrepreneur, right? And, last fall I worked on my own, then ended up having people hire me in. And last fall my husband looked at me and said, stop working for other people. You're not good at it. And so that's my personality. But I'm 10% of the population, right? And so right now they say that 95% of people are going to take a salary. Okay, well, dentistry does have maybe a higher proportion historically of entrepreneurs, but going forward, it may be even out to industry standards. So that means you're only going to get from 95% to 90%, right? And so you don't want to try to you want to find your target market. You're not trying to convince people who aren't a fit.
Well, and that's what I'm saying is it depends on what they're looking for, because right. Okay, like somebody like me, it's always been my dream and I'm going to go out and know my own practice. Well, I could see myself not doing that if there was a good fit to where I was able to get my loans paid off. in a reasonable amount of time. I'm making a good living. I can hang my hat up when I go home, still feel like I have autonomy and control. But my benefits are paid for my family, things like that. But it becomes more than of it depends on, on the mindset of the person they're looking to hire. Cause I feel like a lot of mini DSOs are looking to bring somebody on, and then they'll work for them for at most like 6-7 years. And then they go off and do their own thing. Right. Or they switch to a new company or something because something happens, politics happen and whatnot. They're not getting the ownership opportunity that they want, or the equity, or this, that, and the other, and then they move, or the stock options or the investment options aren't there, or something like that. There was a company that I was strongly considering for a little while, but I like their philosophy. So it was somewhat similar to what you're saying, where they'd give you a percentage of your production, of your collections, but then they would also give you loan repayment. What they did that I thought was kind of interesting is the reason why I didn't really connect with these guys is just the locations weren't, right for us. But they did something where you had like a daily minimum, like a 500 daily minimum or something like that. But then anything $4,000 and below that you produce during the day, you get 25% of that adjusted. So it was not collections; it was adjusted production, is what it was. Okay. So what that is like, okay, insurance pays. So your crown fee is $1,000, right?
Right.
Insurance pays. Your insurance contracted fee with them is $800. So because you take insurance, you're writing off $200 because, hey, it's insurance. Right. So then they would pay you a percentage of that 800 rather than 1,000. That's the adjustment, right?
Right.
But regardless of what's collected, because it's not your job to collect, it's your job to produce.
Okay.
So that's what they were doing. And then they would start out with a loan repayment option as well, where you get like 25,000 the first year, 30,000 the second year, 35,000 the next year. So it would incrementally increase up to like 5 or 6 years or something. And then, so the longer you stayed with the company, the more, the higher the amount of loan repayment was going to be. So it was incentivizing you to stay with the company longer. And then with the production, that was also on a sliding scale as well. So like I said, 4,000 and below, you're making like 25%, 4,000 to 5,000 daily production. Then it goes to like 27%, 5,000 to 6,000 daily production, you're at 30%. And anything above 6,000 daily production, you're at like 33% or something like that.
Okay. So you having a business background, understand a lot about the business side of dentistry. How much education are you given about that during dental school? I mean, are people prepared to run a business?
No. I would say the majority of my classmates, and even myself, like even with a business background, I'd still be intimidated to go out and start a practice. But I have a business background. I've worked in dentistry for a long time. I've seen how like the front offices run and things like that. I dealt with insurance before I became an assistant, right? So like I've been exposed to all of that. And so I feel more comfortable than I'd say a lot of people do. But coming out of school, I think there's a very small, very, very small group of people who would feel comfortable starting up on their own.
Okay.
Just because, like you said, they don't understand the business aspect of it.
So is there any business training at all? I mean, it seems like
there's one class, two classes. It's the same class, but it spans over 2 semesters, called Practice Management. And they talk about some really good principles, but if you haven't ever looked at a balance sheet before, if you've never, if you don't know what a profit and loss, statement is, or an income statement is, you're not going to understand really the key points to running a practice.
Okay. And so is it true that most of the focus is to do cosmetic dentistry and higher ticket items in school? Is that true?
So, all right, this is when it comes in down to practice philosophy. I think that there is this idea of wanting to do everything that looks aesthetically pleasing and to do things that look nice. But the problem I see with that is I think that there's a lot of people who want to do that but don't know how to do it properly. What I mean by that is, okay, you have somebody, this is kind of where the dental this is going to get a little more dental for a second here.
Okay.
You have somebody who comes in, you're going to do 5 fillings over here. You're going to do a crown over here, a root canal and a crown down there, and then 5 fillings over here, right? What have I just done to that patient's bite by putting all that new stuff in their mouth? I've changed the way that their teeth fit together.
Right.
And if I change that too much over time, all those restorations that I put in, if I don't make sure that their bite is in good harmony and good occlusion, over time, it doesn't matter how good they look the day that I put them in. In 5 years, if their bite is off because of something that I did, maybe the crown's too high, or maybe I didn't, maybe they're hitting on their back teeth when they slide their teeth side to side, because you really should only be hitting on your front teeth at that point. If they're hitting on their back teeth, or some, there's something that's wrong because of, the way that their bite is, all these restorations and things that I put in are going to start to fail. So everyone wants to do those nice restorations and things like that, but I think that to do that well, you need to go through some additional training and CE and everything. And I'll be honest, most corporate dental places who say, oh yeah, we do cosmetic dentistry, they don't do that.
Okay.
They're still taking triple tray impressions, which is fine. I'll do a triple tray for a single crown, but if I'm doing a full cosmetic case, I'm going to put that on like an articulator and get it like to match the patient's actual jaw. Right. Nobody hardly does that.
Right.
In regular dentistry. But if you're doing extensive cosmetic work, you really should.
Right.
But a lot of these places that say, oh yeah, we do cosmetic dentistry, they don't do that. And right. So yeah, they say, oh yeah, we do cosmetic dentistry. You get this nice smile. And then in 5 years, it's like, what happened to that nice smile I just spent $20,000 on?
So do most people want to be that kind of dentist though? Is there more cachet to being that type of dentist versus like a public health Medicaid dentist? I mean, you seem like the kind of guy that doesn't care, but I mean,
I want to be able to do those like higher end cases eventually. Like, I think that's something that I want to be able to do, but I want to do it right.
Right.
And I feel like a lot of people just have the mindset of like, oh, this is so dumb that I have to go through all these steps and everything. I'm just going to go out in private practice where I can just do it. I don't think lazy is the right word, but
but I feel like you want to do it, not so much. Okay, because some people are just like, I just really want to work with very high class individuals. I want that to be my patient class. Classification. When I hear you talk about it, I hear you, it seems like it's more complex to you. It's more interesting to you. Like that's the feel that I get from your desire to do it.
Right. Yep. And then you've got some people who are just like, I don't really care. I just want to come do my dentistry, go home, and do it as simply and as most convenient for me as possible. Okay. Which is, I think, kind of a big mindset. Most people don't want to have to take extra steps to get like this crazy good result type thing.
Right.
Those are the people that do. Those are the private practice guys who end up making it because they're the guys who, they have the reputation for doing good work that lasts, that they've done on somebody who was like a retired NFL player or something, somebody big in the community that people know. And but most of the time coming right out of school, most people don't really have that as like I'm going to come right out of school and do that.
Right. So where are you from originally?
Utah.
Oh, you're from Utah. Okay, so
Mhm.
did you know Nebraska had this program? Did you like seek it out or
Nope.
okay.
Nope. So how I got to that process, I started my job search pretty early. I started it like sort of midway through my D3 year. And I feel like that's the other thing. I feel like a lot of folks didn't start until like midway through D4 year. In fact, I've got some classmates who still don't have something like nailed down. And to me, that's just crazy. Like I'm the person who likes to have something planned like way in advance, right? So what I did is I started thinking about like, all right, which of those four options do I want to take? Do I want to start my own? Do I want to, associateship / partnership? Do I want to do corporate, or do I want to do public health? And so I weighed out all the pros and cons of each of those things. And for me, I felt like, well, if I do public health, I can get my loan paid off. My loan's paid off a little bit. It's just going to be, 4 years? What's 4 years in the grand scheme of things? If I get that paid off, then now I have more, not capital, but my capital is less tied up in student loan payments. I can put that down towards starting a practice, and I have more cash flow, if that makes sense. More freedom to start a practice to do those other goals. So I started looking into public health, put my resume on a website, actually for doctors, like hospital doctors, because I was like, okay, well, if there's a subsection for dentists in that place, the only people that hire dentists and doctors are typically public health companies. And these are people who haven't been able to find somebody. So they're getting a headhunter to come find you because they haven't been able to find somebody on their own, which means they're probably going to have higher salary, higher loan payment, things like that.
You're
I
such
put a
a
lot of
you're such a business person.
put a lot of strategy into this. Yes, I put a lot of thought, a lot of strategy into this. And so then I started getting calls. And like I said, even then, the highest that I was hearing loan repayment wise, the second highest that I heard was like 40,000
Okay.
per year. And then I got a phone call from this place, and they said, yeah, we can do 60,000 a year. They told me all about the benefits package. They told me about what the base pay was going to be and everything. And I was like, okay, that sounds great. What's the catch? And they said, well, we're in Nebraska. And I was like, well, where in Nebraska? And they said, well, just come out and check and see. So they paid to have me go out and look at it. So I flew out, looked at it. It was actually a decent sized city. I was surprised. They paid a second time to have my wife come out, which I thought was kind of interesting. It would have been cheaper for them to just let my family come out together, but I guess they didn't want to pay for the extra ticket unless they were sure that I was interested. I don't know. But that's kind of how that happened. I, got a phone call from them. The numbers were right. So I decided to go out and take a peek, and we were pleasantly surprised.
So how far is that from Utah?
About 10 hours, about halfway from Kentucky where we are. So,
Okay. So you're getting closer to home. So do you want to go home?
no. Utah is very saturated. My wife and I's family situation, we have 4 families between the two of us. Both our parents are divorced and remarried. And so holidays are just kind of not always a fun thing, at least for me. Her family gets along really well with each other, but my parents don't. And so like being close is important, but we'd like to be able to be somewhere where we can. Yeah, exactly.
A little separation. We live in Austin. My husband's family is in Houston. So they're 3 hours by car. But
Exactly.
we don't have to go to dinner every Sunday.
Growing up, my mom was like, yeah, I want to live close to you, but not in your backyard. And I was like, okay. And so when I, was talking, she's like, well, gracious, that's too far. And I was like, well, what you said you didn't want to live in my backyard? She was like, well, yeah, I was thinking like 20 minutes. I'm like, Mom, that's my living room. So I don't think that, and like I said, I do feel like I'm probably a little more strategic about things than most new grads. But again, I think that's because I have a family and my loans are higher, and I'm also a little bit older. I'm 30.
Okay.
But like I said, I think it depends on, like you said, okay, using a sales analogy here, right? I'm not going to sell the same product to everybody.
Right.
Right. I got to know who is my target demographic? Who am I looking for? What is their age? What are their likes? What are their dislikes? What do they do on the weekends, right? I know my customer before I even design my pitch to them.
Right.
So it sounds like kind of what you're trying to help them do is they need to identify who's their buyer persona, right? Who's the dentist that they want to have work for them? Is it the guy with the family who's planning on staying for long term? Is it the new grad who's single and wants to just kind of work for a couple of years, get his implants CE done or get his CE paid for and then go out and work for somebody else? Or,
So who do you think their dentist persona should be?
Who do I think it should be?
Mm-hmm. I'm kind of thinking maybe they really shouldn't be targeting dental students. I think that they should try to target people that are 4 to 5 years as an associate somewhere and now are thinking of doing their own thing. That's my initial gut reaction.
I think that's probably I think that's wise because if your target demographic is brand new students, then you're going to have to go through all the hassle of training them, getting them faster. I feel like a lot of brand new students have this mindset and this mentality that dentistry is going to be just a big bed of roses, and I'm going to graduate from school and everything's going to be fine. I'm going to be king of my world, and I'm going to be able to make all these decisions and have complete and total control over everything, and everyone's just going to kind of sort of bend to my will. And then you get out and find out that it's not even close to what you think. They're not going to know the first thing about insurance. They're not going to know the first thing about what do I really need to produce in a day to make a good living, right? And I think what happens a lot of times with new grads is they get frustrated in their first couple positions, not necessarily because there's anything wrong with the company that they're working for, but because their expectations were off.
Okay.
And so like when you sell somebody something, right, the first thing that I want to do is it better for me to sell somebody something that is better than their expectations or below their expectations?
Yeah, I like selling it below and then looking like a rock star.
Right, exactly. Because if you make this thing look fantastic, it's like home security, right? I used to sell home security, and I'd talk somebody up and tell them how great their home security system was going to be. And then the technician would get out there and they'd be like, "Wait a minute, I'm only getting 3 sensors, 2 motions in a fire sensor. Like this isn't as good as I thought it was going to be." They get frustrated, and so same thing here. I don't think it's anything necessarily wrong with the companies. I think that the students just don't really have a realistic view of what dentistry is really like.
Okay.
So I think you're right on that. You're hitting the nail right on the head there. I wouldn't go after brand new students necessarily. It's interesting because they're probably the easiest demographic to get because they need a job, right? They're out of school. They have all these loans. They need a job. So they're an easy demographic to get. But if all you're picking is the low-hanging fruit, you're going to have a lot of turnover. You're going to have a lot of training to do and a lot of expense associated with that training and opportunity cost as well. Because if you get somebody in there who takes 3 hours to do 2 fillings versus somebody who's worked for a little while, yeah, you'll have to pay the person a little bit more to do because they're more experienced than the brand new dentist. But then they're going to make you more money because instead of taking 3 hours to do those 3 fillings, they'll do it in an hour.
Okay. So what I'm thinking is, because I'm a content producer, and then thank you so much, I'm going to have to run because I have an off-site meeting, but I'm a big believer in giving away content for free, right? And so people in dental school may not realize that they need it or whatever. So I don't know if that should be the target market, but my idea is that Comfort Dental believes that they're kind of like a dentist practice, but one that's based on more business principles. My idea is that they should produce, so I wrote down some things you say, they should produce some videos on everything you know it's about how to do insurance, how many procedures do you know in a day, profit and loss statements, and actually produce dental related short business videos, kind of like as tutorials. So when people do get to jobs and they are kind of frustrated, there's a resource for them to look for information. Do you think anybody will pay attention?
I think so. Again, I think it just comes down to
if you're talking to the right audience.
Well, talking to the right audience, but also there's a fine line between managing someone's expectations and selling, right? Like you want to provide something that is attractive and that looks good, but also be realistic and help them understand, like, hey, look, you know, this is what a typical first couple of years out of dental school looks like, no matter who you're with. You know, here's how we have looked at that. I think what you want to do, you want to come at it from the side of like, hey, look, we want to be your ally. We want to be your friend here, right? How many of your classmates have you seen go out and have this experience where they work for somebody, they leave for a couple of years? We don't want that to happen to you, right? So sort of take that as like, we want to bring you in and be your help, your mentor here, right? We're your ally, we're your friends. So we don't want you to go through those first 2 years and end up having a bad experience. This is what we've seen happen in the industry. These are the problems that we've seen. Don't mention any names. Don't say any other companies, right? Just say, these are the problems that we've seen a lot of young guys have. And, you know, we think that's really unfortunate. So we said, you know, there's got to be a better way. Well, this is what we've come up with. This is the solution we've come to you with, right? And so you're painting that picture of, you're painting their needs picture, right? You're painting that picture of, well, here are the problems that you're going to face. Man, we're so sorry about that. That stinks. Well, guess what? We've come up with a solution for you, and we'd like to help you kind of get that.
So but can that message be sold to people that are still in school? Because are they going to believe it?
I think if it's portrayed properly, yeah.
Okay.
Again, it's going to be a different approach for them versus somebody who's been out working already, because the person who's already been out working is going to already know that, right? They're going to already have been through that. And so your pitch is going to be different. But
all right. So I was thinking about that dental school, what's next, right? I'm like, I feel that a lot of the people, they're not really, you know, I always have to tell my clients, nobody's going to the internet and searching for you, right? They're going to the internet and searching for their problem, whether it's a recipe or directions or how to find a job or whatever. So when they type into Google, you want to have the answer to which they are looking for. And honestly, it's not hard sales. Like, the world doesn't want to be sold to anymore. People are skipping advertisements and, you know, clicking away the banner ads and things like that. People want to be educated and entertained.
From an employer perspective, I would be very worried about hiring somebody who found me on, you know, who is Google dental jobs, right? That means that they have no people skills and haven't been able to network with somebody, and, you know.
Yeah.
So
it's true. It's very true. Well, thank you so much, Chandler. This was absolutely and totally amazing. You literally cut down about 10 hours of my Google researching, and I feel like I can actually trust it.
Well, hopefully that was helpful. I appreciate it, and yeah, it was a pleasure to meet you. The only reason actually I was so quick to respond actually is my cousin. You're the only other Devaney I've ever met in my life.
Oh, really?
My cousin's name is Devaney. She spells it I-E instead of Y, but yeah.
Oh, wow, that's cool. I just had a conversation with a young girl, like a teenager this weekend, and she's like, your name is really cool. My name is kind of different too. How do you feel when you meet somebody else with your name? And I was like, it's kind of weird because you're used to being the only one of you. So when you meet somebody else, it's kind of like, that's my name. Well, tell your cousin you met another.
I will.
All right. Thanks, Chandler.
Have a good day.
All
Take
right,
care.
bye.
Bye.